Thanks for being with us on AM Agenda. With me in Adelaide, Senator Simon Birmingham, and in Sydney, Labor's frontbencher Jason Clare. Jason, on the issue of the processes within government, a report in the Australian Financial Review suggesting a review by the head of the Department of Prime Minister and Cabinet has found the kitchen cabinet of Gillard, Swan, Tanner and Rudd has not been consulting the broader cabinet enough. This is confirming what many have suspected, that decision-making within the government is too centralised.
Well, Kieran, I'm not going to comment on the details of how Cabinet operates. I'm sure you wouldn't expect me to, but I'm not a member of Cabinet either. My impression, being a backbencher and now Parliamentary Secretary, is that this government is very consultative and involves all members of the government in policy development. That said, government has to have the capacity to act quickly when it's needed, and it needs mechanisms to do that. One of those are Cabinet committees. They have existed under governments from time immemorial, whether it's the Howard government, Hawke or Keating. The same system operated for John Howard. In many occasions, John Howard made decisions without consulting even Cabinet committees, and one example of that was the $10 billion package for the Murray-Darling Basin. So government needs to have the capacity to act quickly on occasions. The best example I can think of there is the stimulus package that protected the economy from going into recession and protected Australian deposits in banks. So flexibility is important, and you need the mechanisms to do that.
That same report in the AFR, Simon, suggests that the government is going to come up with a renewed climate change policy after its ETS backflip. What are you expecting as the shadow climate action parliamentary secretary? What are you expecting to find the government come up with in that regard?
Well, Kieran, firstly, if I can address the substantive part of the report which goes to the cabinet processes, and I feel sorry for Jason having to defend those, because for him to say this is a consultative cabinet, a consultative government, less than a week after it was revealed that the Environment Minister, Peter Garrett, learnt of the backflip on the ETS from the media without any consultation is just laughable. It's a laughable series of processes, and you've got this gang of four who are at the heart of the government: the Prime Minister, the Deputy Prime Minister, the Treasurer and the Finance Minister, the four most senior people. It doesn't matter whether it's the four of them sitting around the cabinet table or in a gang of four together. They are the root of the problem, and they are, of course, the Rudd Labor government, the four of them. And so any process will be flawed as long as the flawed judgment and flawed decision-making of those four people is at the heart of it. As for Kevin Rudd's climate change policy, well, it's in tatters at present. He doesn't have one, having conducted this backflip on the ETS. What he'll do in the future, I don't know. I suspect what he'll probably do is copy elements of the coalition policy, the direct action plan, because that's the only plan that's out there for real action on climate change at present. And that, of course, is something that Kevin Rudd could copy, probably will copy, but it will show him for the fraud that he is in terms of the way he attacks a policy firstly and then adopts it when it suits him at his convenience.
Okay, we just have to finish on one other matter, very sad matter. The two Australian soldiers killed in the Oruzgan province, 25-year-old sapper Darren Smith and 21-year-old sapper Jacob Morland. This is how the Prime Minister and the Opposition Leader responded to that tragic news yesterday.
This is an enormous loss for their families and their loved ones. On behalf of the Government and the people of Australia, I extend to them our deepest condolences, our deepest sympathies.
This is a terrible tragedy. It's a tragedy for their families. It's a tragedy for our country.
This is not a partisan issue. I know that both sides of politics support the deployment there, but Jason, should our leadership be putting a timeline, giving some indication on how long Australia's troops will be put in harm's way there?
You're right, Kieran. It's not a political issue. Simon and I, and I'm sure yourself as well, are as one on this. It's a heartbreaking story, and our hearts go out to the families of these two young soldiers and all of the Australians who are wearing uniform in dangerous situations around the world. The deaths of these two young soldiers yesterday reminds us just how dangerous the work that they do is, but also how important, and the reasons why you don't set a timeline, but you focus on the mission. If we were to walk out of Afghanistan on any given date, it would make the place more susceptible to to terrorism re-emerging. Remember, this is a place where the people that killed 88 Australians in Bali, where the people who planned the bombing of the World Trade Center in New York base their operations and train people. And if we walk out just because a date has occurred, it means that Australians will be less safe and the world will be less safe, because terrorism and the training of terrorism will re-emerge there. Our responsibility and our task, our mission in Afghanistan, is to train up the 4th Afghan National Brigade. That's our responsibility, to train the Afghanis so that they can protect their own country, and that's the job that we're doing.
Simon, we're really out of time, but I just want to get your thoughts quickly if I can.
Kieran, look, the loss of any young life in combat is a terrible tragedy. It always has been and it always will be, and our hearts, of course, go out to the families of those 2 soldiers. But Jason is absolutely right in terms of the approach we must take to Afghanistan. Nobody wants to be there a day longer, a moment longer than is absolutely necessary. But that doesn't mean we should leave before the job is finished, and that job is to leave a country intact in a manner that doesn't allow terrorists to flourish and foster and inflict pain and anguish on the rest of the world like they were previously.
Yeah,
Senator Birmingham and Jason Clare, as always, appreciate your time this morning, gentlemen. Thank you both.
Thanks, Kieran.
A pleasure. Thank you, Kieran.
We'll be
Thanks,
back
Jason.
again at lunchtime, 12:30 p.m. with Lunchtime Agenda.